Hey folks, ever since I began doing speedruns back in Shadowlands, one of the most frequent questions I've been asked is which consumables I prepare for my runs. I made a video covering this back in 2020, but many things have changed with Dragonflight, so I've decided to make a new speedrun consumable guide based on my recent 10 to 70 world record speedrun. Before the run began, I gave a detailed overview on every item that I planned on using, and I'll be showing a lot of those explanations within this video. However, since my world record was done on a Guardian Druid, I only discussed the consumables that agility users would want to run. Throughout this guide, I'll be intercutting my original explanation with some bonus information about which consumables intellect and strength users will want to run instead. Also, I do want to quickly note that heirlooms and their associated enchants will not be discussed as part of this video. While I do plan on making a full heirloom guide eventually, many of the best in slot enchants are actually bugged at the time of me recording this video. This scaling bug has been around since the start of Dragonflight, and it makes it impossible for any new players to apply best-in-slot enchants to their shoulder or pants heirlooms. I don't want to make any heirloom guides until Blizzard finally fixes this bug, so I'm opting to only cover the consumables within this particular guide. As a final note, keep in mind that none of these consumables are required if you want to level efficiently. Most of these items offer extremely minimal time saves for their cost, but I use them all in my world record attempts because in that type of scenario, any possible time save you can get is priceless. With all of that out of the way, let's jump into Past Haraldan's explanation of the items he's preparing for his upcoming world record attempt.
So that's it for the regular heirlooms. This is Dragonflight crafting accessories. I'm going to be doing the blacksmithing and enchanting first crafts to get XP later on. So I only have the ones that provide crafting speed because for the sake of a speedrun, that's the only stat that actually reasonably increases our speed. Nothing else really matters. So I'll quickly go over the basics. I think a lot of people who have watched my runs are familiar with this. Gun shoes, really good consumable item. You'll see me using it a lot. Goblin glider, same thing. Bread and butter. XA1000, very, very useful for water transportation. There's a lot of good uses both for Horde and Alliance. Shimmer Scale Diving Suit and Swim Speed Potion. These are two that I actually don't think I'll be using in this run. I'll be mailing it over anyway, just in case I need to use one of my backup zones, but I don't plan on using this. This is specifically for Alliance and Red Ridge Mountains. There is an underwater section where both of these are quite good. But outside of that, most of the leveling areas where you want to go through the water, you're going across the surface. And if you're going across the surface, XA1000 is always going to be a faster way to travel. These are only good if you are diving underwater, which, like I said, on my leveling route only happens in Red Ridge Mountains, and I will not be going there, provided nothing catastrophic happens.
Okay, before we move on to the next section in my previously recorded video, I'm going to be talking about Cracked Radnax's Control Gem, which is one very important item that I didn't mention in my original recording. So, this thing, if I use Control R, it summons a little surfboard that goes at ridiculously high speeds, and you can use it 3 times before you have to get a new one. So the reason that I didn't discuss this initially when I first recorded that is because it actually has been bugged for quite a while. So it used to be that Cracked Radnax's Control Gem way back in Shadowlands was usable at any level, and then once it became popular, Blizzard, as is tradition, decided they were going to nerf it, and they applied a level 40 requirement to it. However, very recently, I'm not sure exactly when, the requirement has been removed, so now this amazing speed leveling item is back in use for runs, though I will note that it is very, very expensive if you don't farm it yourself. I've discussed this in the past. If you want to farm this, you'll have to go to Argus, then you want to go to Antoran Wastes and do these bonus objectives. Admiral Relvar, Commander Teslaz, and Zanarian the Allseer, I believe is his name. There's another one that can appear right around there. And they have a 33% chance each to drop one of these. Really good way to farm it if you want to get your hands on these things, because generally they'll cost 5k or more in the auction house. And as mentioned before, once you use all 3 charges, since it is unique, the only way you can get a new one is by going to your mailbox and pulling one out. So I've pre-mailed a bunch of Radnax gems over. This is what I do whenever I do a speedrun. I mail like 5 or 6, and then I use all 3 charges. The moment I go through it, pop over to my mailbox, get a new one, and we're good to go. All right. Really wanted to talk about that because it is a very important item, but now back to Past Haraldan discussing the rest of the items I prepared for that speedrun.
Light step hoof plates. So there's 2 types of mount equipment you'll want to use, either this or Comfortable Rider's Barding, and this is the one for tanks, so I will be doing this run on a Guardian Druid, so that's a tank, right? I'm using light step hoof plates. The Comfortable Rider's Barding makes you immune to being dazed, so you use it on healers and DPS. That is nice because as a tank, you get that by default. Tank specs are just immune to the daze effect. As a DPS or healer, you are not automatically immune to that. The Comfortable Rider's Barding does give you that effect. So that's why you use it only for tanks, because you already have that effect. XP pots, drafted to 10 lands. This is still worth using. The nice thing about this is levels 50 to 60 are so fast, and you can't use it after 49, but it is so fast to get from 50 to 60 that a lot of times you'll end up carrying over your draft of the 10 lands from level 49 into Dragonflight leveling, and you still benefit from this, even if you can't manually refresh it. So this is actually very, very good still. Highly recommend farming it. A lot of people will sit there and say like, oh, it's not worth the time it takes to farm. I'd rather level 10% more slowly than go and farm draft of 10 lands. Yeah, that's complete bullshit. I have a guide on my channel, how to farm draft of 10 lands. This is still absolutely worth farming. I only bring it up because I've seen a lot of contention on like whether it's even worth the time to get this, and I assure you it is. But you know, hey, some people are just going to argue that they would rather be lazy and not get something and waste their time in the long run. Hey, you know, to each their own, right? Thermal Anvil. This one is interesting. Thermal Anvil is for Dark Moon Profession leveling. And on that note, I will quickly touch upon the other ones. So blue dye, red dye, coarse thread, simple flower. These are all reagents for the Dark Moon Fair Profession quests. I'm going to be doing tailoring, blacksmithing, and cooking. Everybody can do cooking, and then you can complete 2 profession quests. You can technically do all of them if you really want to abandon professions and pick them up, but there's no trainers in the Dark Moon Fair, so it's not really worth doing more than 2. Also, a lot of them require you to run around and interact with a bunch of objects, which takes a lot of time. The nice thing about tailoring is all you need to do is get these 3 items, coarse thread, red dye, blue dye, and then you just get the quest item, interact with it, boom, you're done. Quest complete. You get a full quest worth of experience. Simple flower, same thing. You just get the quest, you bread the frogs, and then chuck them into a pot. Quest done. And the blacksmith one is even easier. All you need is an anvil, so you can do a thermal anvil right next to the quest giver. It gives you the materials to make 4 horseshoes. You apply it to the horse, takes 15 seconds. That is really easy experience. Swiftness potions, pretty straightforward, just increases your run speed at low levels. This is really nice to have. Darkmoon ride ticket. This is bought from a vendor, so don't buy this off the auction house. Buy this off the vendor within the Darkmoon Fair. I'm just mailing it over because that way, instead of having to stop, interact with the vendor, buy the item, and then walk onto the carousel to get the experience buff, I just basically glide from a cliff above the Darkmoon Fair, as you'll see, land directly on the carousel, and because I already have the ticket in my bags, it gets consumed, and I get entry without having to talk to the NPC. So just saves a little bit of time mailing it over ahead of time. Sanguine Hibiscus. This is a quest item for one of the quests in, I believe, the Underbog is the name of the dungeon. And it is one of the only quest rewards from the TBC dungeons that you can just buy ahead of time and mail over. And normally you would have to like pick it up through little plants throughout the dungeon, which of course takes time. That's time I'm not spending holding W and reaching the end. So mailing it over ahead of time just to get that quest out of the way. What else? I guess the bags, straightforward stuff. This is 34 slot bags for regular stuff, and then a 36 slot reagent bag. You don't need to buy the biggest bags, right? Like this is like 1,000 gold per bag, and then I think the reagent one is 3,000 gold, which, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, the nice thing about the bags is this is something you can use at max level too. So it's not really a speed leveling thing. It's just the best possible bags that you can get right now, and they're useful even then. Like I'm still using this character, right? And I still have this monk that I'm on right now was my previous world record, or at least at the moment of recording, it is my current world record, 10 to 70. Hopefully I'm going to beat this guy's world record in this video, but we'll see. But obviously when I did that speedrun, I mailed these bags over, and I'm still using them to this day, months later. And it's nice because then when I'm organizing runs like this, I have much more bag space to work with. So yeah, I would say that it's probably worth the investment to get the biggest bags if it's a character you plan on using long term. If not, yeah, you can get some cheap ones. Wildercloth bags are pretty affordable. They're like 30 gold a piece. Enchanting Vellum, I don't really know if I'll need to use these. It's backup. Like I said before, I'm getting blacksmithing and enchanting for the Dragonflight profession leveling. In theory, I should be able to get most of it done with just blacksmithing, and then I'm getting to like 1 or 2 leatherworking crafts, and I think that'll cover it. I have enchanting as a backup just on the off chance that I run out of time. Enchanting can be done anywhere in the world. It doesn't require like an anvil or a station or something like that. So That's why it is my backup profession, and that's why I'm just bringing 200 enchanting vellums, sits in one stack, right? I could probably get 5 and it would accomplish the same thing. That's something you'll probably notice. Am I going to use 40 gun shoes over the course of this run? No. Am I going to use all 20 Darkmoon tickets, or even all 8 XP pots, or 80 swiftness potions? No, I'm not going to use that many. But I end up reusing a lot of this stuff, so by stocking up now and making sure I have everything that I could possibly need for this run, as long as it doesn't take up extra slots, right? So there is a chance that I may use 21 gun shoes, in which case that's why I have 2 full stacks. But because Swiftness Potion stacks up to 200, there's no downside to me bringing 10 versus 80. So I have 80, and then when I do runs in the future, I can use the leftover. So that's the main reason I overstock on a lot of this, just because it doesn't take up any additional bag space, so there's no downside. Darkmoon quest items, straightforward stuff. The only weird one here is Moonfang's Pelt. The other ones come from just using the Darkmoon Adventurer's Journal and doing certain activities, and Moonfang's Pelt is from killing Moonfang. This one tends to be really expensive in the auction house, but I would actually say if you want to get this, it's really not hard, because I wasn't willing to shell out 40,000 gold to get Moonfang's Pelt, so I actually farmed this one myself, and it took me like 20 minutes. I just ran around, killed the little wolves, and then tanked Moonfang for like 5 minutes while other people joined in and chipped him down. Really not that bad. I would say 20 minutes is worth saving 40k. You could also just not use this item if you want. So, these items, Rune Ceravite Rod and Pioneer's Leather Boots, and this thing, these are all items that are part of a special set of profession quests you can get in the Waking Shores. These are the required materials, so, as usual with a lot of other stuff, like with these Darkmoon quests, I've mailed over the materials ahead of time. And on that note, everything you see in my Chronocloth reagent bag, this is part of the Dragonflight crafting stuff. So there's a few quest rewards. One of the quests requires salt deposits, another requires salamander scales, and then lava beetles. Those are for the aforementioned Waking Shores quests, but everything else is something that I will potentially need while leveling a profession. Last bag, this is all of the actual consumables that I'll be using throughout the run. A lot of familiar faces here, some new ones. Lemon Herb Fillet, I've been using this since the early days of my speedruns. It's really nice. You just right-click it, you get the food buff, bing, bang, boom. It's like a minor versatility buff, but it is the best one that you can get at like level 10. Same with Darkmoon Firewater. It says on the tooltip that it gives 230 attack power. It does not actually give that much at low levels. The scaling on this one is really, really wonky. It gives about like 2 attack power at level 10, which is still the best flask that you can get at that level, and then it scales up with you as you level up, but we will be replacing it eventually. I have some lesser healing potions. This is specifically because early in the route I will be doing Burning Crusade dungeons, and Burning Crusade dungeons, they are sometimes a little bit sketchy if your healer isn't on point, so having healing potions just as a safety net, that's nice. Drums of Fury, just for lust, doing dungeons, it'll help to have my own manual lust. This is my flask from levels 20 to 30, Elixir of the Mongoose. It's slightly better than Darkmoon Firewater. Potion of the Tol'vir is my on-use pot for levels 30 to 40. It does share a cooldown with Swiftness Potion, so I have no on-use potion for 10 to 30, but 10 to 30 is when Swiftness Potion is at its best, because it's when I don't have flying, so a lot of times, if I'm just running from point A to point B, Swiftness Potion helps, and eventually I will stop using this as much when I have faster ways to travel, and I will start using Potion of the Tol'vir to help kill stuff faster. Ghost Elixir is, in my opinion, the best elixir that you can use in the 30 to 40 range. There are a few options. I like this one the best. It's also nice because it's just versatility, so it works on casters, strength users, agi users, really flexible, but I'm using that for 30 to 40 flask. At level 30, you can start using these scrolls. So there are 3 total scrolls from BFA, which is what I'm using. There is Fortitude, or Battle Shout, so attack power, and there is spell power. So obviously I'm doing this run as a Guardian Druid, I don't need spell power, so I'm only bringing Fortitude and Battle Shout, and obviously like if you're a warrior and you have Battle Shout, you don't need to bring your own War Scroll of Battle Shout, you would just need a War Scroll of Fortitude. For the level 40 to 50 range, I have Bear Tartar as my food buff. This will give me a minor speed boost whenever I kill something, so pretty nice to have. Potion of Unbridled Fury is a nice proc potion that you can use at level 40. Greater Flask of the Currents is like ridiculously overstated for its level. This is very, very, very good, but I will only be using it from 40 to 50, but it is actually quite a nice bump. Hyper Augment Rune, the first Augment Rune you can get is Draenor stuff at level 40. Fried Bonefish, Phantom Fire, Shadow Core Oil, Spectral Power, Deathly Ferocity, and Battle Scarred Augment Rune. These are all of my 50 to 60 consumables. Fried bonefish technically doesn't work until level 55. So realistically, I'm just going to be using bear tartar until I hit 60 because they're like mostly identical. And I'm not going to stop at exactly 55 to refresh this. It is worth noting that you can technically get a level 45 augment rune in between Hyper and Battle Scarred, but it gives like 7 agility. So I'm not gonna, there's a certain level of like min-maxing that even I'm unwilling to do, right? Hyper augment, obviously 5 is better than nothing, and I figure 9 is, you know, it's a decent bit better than 5, so I replace it. And then of course, when you get to Veiled Augment Rune, this is all my level 60 to 70 stuff. This is double the value of Battle Scarred, so I am going to be using this. We have, once again, the next level of drums. These are drums from 10 to 50. These are drums from 50 to 60. These are drums from 60 to 70. I'm using Glacial Fury. The reason I'm using Glacial Fury over other flasks is because this is a proc effect. And I've gone over this before, but TLDR, proc effects are better than flat stat bonuses while leveling up, when available, right? And obviously, not all of them. Some proc effects are just really undertuned, like we said earlier, Mark of the Hidden Satyr. But as long as a proc effect is well-tuned, which Glacial Fury is, it ends up having a disproportionately higher value for leveling characters, because think about it like this. The value of Glacial Fury and Tepid Versatility is tuned around the amount of damage that a max-level character is able to put out. So you're basically, Blizzard is calculating it on how much value will a max level character get out of 400 versatility, whatever it is that Tepid Verse gives. They are going to get way more damage contribution out of that Tepid Verse flask than you will as a level 60 guy with like heirlooms and shit. But it is a similar damage contribution from Glacial Fury, which just it does a flat amount of damage. You don't need to be doing more damage to get like a force multiplier on it from your Glacial Fury flask. This will do the same damage for a level 60 and a level 70, so generally that's why proc effects are desired, stuff like Elemental Force, right? Same deal with Shocking Disclosure. It is a flat damage potion. It does a lot, especially on AoE pulls. Buzzing Rune, this is just, you know, the upgrade from Shadow Core Oil and from Shadow Oil. It's a weapon rune, right? But weapon runes and weapon oils are functionally the same buff. They overwrite each other. And then, of course, we have healing potions if we need them, and I already touched on Veiled Augment Rune.
Alright, so Future Haraldin chiming in here. As mentioned, we're going to take a look at the other types of consumables that you'll use if you are not an agility user. Now, for starters, there is a lot of overlap, so I have 2 different bags here. The bag on the bottom, these are all of the consumables that you will use regardless of agility, intellect, strength. You'll use them for every single class or spec. So Lemon Herb Fillet, at low levels, this is going to be your food buff of choice. Then eventually you'll upgrade to Bear Tartar, and eventually you'll upgrade into Fried Bonefish. This is the case for literally every single spec in the game. It's just better statted than any alternatives. Same with drums, obviously, nothing changes there. You can opt to not use drums if you're playing a Lust class, like, you know, a Hunter or a Mage, something like that. As mentioned before, Ghost Elixir is going to be good for everybody. It just offers you a ton of versatility at this level. It's just very good. You get this around level 30. Unbridled Power is really, really, really good, so it's going to be used by pretty much everybody at level 40. Same as mentioned with Bear Tartar, and all of the consumables for Shadowlands and Dragonflight. All of this stuff will automatically adjust, so Spectral Power will just give you flat primary stat. This will change to be Agility, Intellect, Strength, depending on what you're playing, and all of the other things will also just give you either proc effects that are just good for everybody, or flat stats. Obviously, you can see here Battle Scarred Augment Rune gives you all 3 primary stats. You don't need different types. The only minor correction I will make to what I said before is, while I personally was using Buzzing Rune, which gives crit, it is not the only rune you can use. There is also Hissing Rune, which gives mastery, and Howling Rune, which gives haste. Now, this has nothing to do with whether you are a caster, a melee user, or an agi user. This is entirely dependent on which secondary stat you want. So a lot of classes will want a lot of crit while leveling up, but there are a few specs that will prefer mastery, so you can use Hissing Rune for those situations. Now, for the different types of consumables that you'll use, we're going to kick things off with a bit of a weird one, and that is Brilliant Wizard Oil. And this is kind of unique in its own little category. There is only one really good low-level weapon oil, and it is for casters. It is this particular oil. Obviously, this can only be applied up to level 50, so pretty much the moment you hit level 20, you will no longer be able to apply this to your caster weapons. It does Pretty much nothing for melee. I guess if you want to get 5 crit off it, technically speaking, melee can use this. And I've messed around with Shadow Oil and a few others as shown in the edited text over my previous video, but they just really did not end up being good. I was not impressed by them. They did like no damage. So the only one that actually does offer you some benefits at low levels is Brilliant Wizard Oil. This is something that agility and strength users really have no comparative consumable for. So I guess casters, you get like a nice little bonus there. Now, as for low-level flasks, this is a bit of a weird one as well. So both Agi and Strength users will want to use Darkwind Firewater until around level 20-21, whenever you can start using either Elixir of the Mongoose, or in the case of Strength users, Elixir of Major Strength. But as for Intellect users, they also kind of have a little advantage, where Elixir of Greater Intellect, this can be used at level 10, and it actually provides more of a bonus at that level relative to Darkwind Firewater. However, unlike Agi and Strength, which get a better flask around level 20, there really is no better flask until you get to level 30, which is when you will use Ghost Elixir. So, Intellect users get a better flask to start off with, but then they have no comparative thing to Mongoose or Major Strength at levels 20 to 30. So you will still use Elixir of Greater Intellect all the way up until you swap to Ghost Elixir. Now, for the level 30 to 40 potions, this is pretty straightforward. There is Potion of the Tolvir, as mentioned, for agility users, and then there's just Volcanic Potion, the intellect version, and Golem Blood Potion, the strength version. They all do the exact same thing, except they give different primary stats. I mentioned this a little bit before, but the War Scrolls, which you can start using at level 30, these are dependent on kind of what buffs you have access to. So if you are a mage, you don't need to use War Scroll of Intellect, but if you are not a caster, you also don't need to use this because Intellect does nothing for you. So this is useful for classes like, priests and warlocks, which don't have Arcane Intellect, but need to get the 3% int. Same for Fortitude. Fortitude is the most universally applicable one because it is used by everybody but Priest because everyone can benefit from 3% stamina. And then War Scroll of Battle Shout is used by any melee, agility, or strength users that are not a warrior because, as previously mentioned, warriors can apply their own version of this buff. Now, for the Augment runes, this is once again fairly straightforward. Hyper gives you 5 agility, Focus gives you 5 intellect, and Stout gives you 5 strength. They are all completely identical, except they give different types of primary stats. And lastly, we have a similar situation with the BFA flasks. So they all give the exact same bonus, except Flask of the Currents is best for agility, Flask of Endless Fathoms is best for intellect, and Flask of the Undertow is best for strength. And that covers all of the consumables used in leveling speedruns. I will be making a written version of this guide, which you can find on my website. That is linked in the video description below. And if you have yet to check out my leveling guide or my leveling speedruns, I have links to those in the description as well, or you can just find them here on my channel. Hope you found this helpful, and I will catch you in the next video. Peace.